Hey, hello everybody, and welcome to Azure Flash News episode 97.
Welcome, everybody.
Yes,
Happy Friday.
happy Friday. Hope everybody's had a good day, a good afternoon, whatever it is. Welcome to the show. We have some really
That's right.
exciting news to share with you because
Ignite.
Ignite is this
We-
week.
This Ignite thing that happened all week, and some really cool announcements came out of it.
Yeah, it
Frankly,
really did.
uh, looking forward to sharing some of these. And there's a lot more than what we're going to cover today. So that's why we're including one of our links specifically in the context of this conversation. But yeah, so let's just kind of briefly talk about what we're going to cover
Yeah,
today.
let's do it.
We've got some new communication capabilities that have stemmed from the work we've done with the context within the context of Teams.
That's right.
Not Teams per se,
I
but
know.
we'll get to that. The ability to kind of continue to evolve some of the conversations that we've had around enterprise integration and management and monitoring and security capabilities
Yeah,
specifically in that
kind of
domain.
an
So
all
that'll
kind of
be
an
a fun one.
all up overview a little bit.
Yep, absolutely. And to that point, how to really kind of blur the lines between what's on-prem, what's at the edge, what's in Azure, what's in other cloud providers. So some neat things there.
Mm-hmm.
An announcement that's out of this world.
We'll just leave it at that.
I'll leave it at that. An announcement that's really close to this world if you're in the Arizona area. And last but not least, a great resource for all things Ignite.
Yes.
Yeah, awesome. So let's get
Let's
started.
do that.
So
Let's get started here.
there's a misconception, I think, when people hear about Teams, they think it's Skype rebranded, correct?
Right.
I mean, I've kind of heard that from more than one
No.
customer. The
It's
reality is Teams was basically a complete
it
rewrite.
really was. It's definitely not
Um,
Skype for business. I know
no,
that
it's not
for
Skype for
sure.
business.
Rewrite.
And it was basically built cloud native, right? So it was built entirely on the Azure
Yep.
infrastructure. And we're at a point now where we run, what is it, over 5 billion meeting minutes in a single
Yeah,
day.
it's just
Okay. So the
really
platform is proved. Yep.
really crazy. Awesome scale.
Yeah, absolutely. So does that mean you can only use Teams to leverage these capabilities?
No.
Well, okay, awesome. So tell me what you mean by that. When you say no, that
So
means that there's other
that's
options.
right. There are some new Azure native services
Yeah.
that encompass these kinds of capabilities. So if you want to add Azure native services that include things like IM and calls and video, we've got that now as an Azure service that you can use in your application. So we basically took
That's right.
the Teams capabilities and broke them down into services so that you can use them. So if you have an application and you want to embed, video calling in it and it to be completely branded for you, you can do that now.
Yep,
And,
absolutely.
and, and it's
So
called, I didn't
to
say
that
this, it's called Azure Communication Services. And I am showing this,
super creative name.
that's right, I am showing this, I'm showing on the screen for those of you on YouTube, high quality audio and video, chat
That's right.
experiences, SMS, like text messaging,
Yep.
and
Yep.
also
Simple.
even phone numbers. So, plain old telephone systems.
Yep. So soon, so basically, we'll be able to integrate on-premises equipment, right, and carrier networks that have a SIP, and that'll be coming in approximately the October
Yeah,
timeframe for SMS and for phone numbers
those things are
specifically.
coming just a little bit later, but the
Yep.
voice,
But having said that, there are some great get started today, right? We've got the Azure Com Services
yep.
website. We've got some sample applications within on GitHub. And the cool thing about this is, for example, if you were to take something like Azure Communication Services, but then combine that, for example, with cognitive
Mm-hmm.
services, right? Take this capability. Imagine you're in a video conference, but you're talking with somebody, and it's doing real-time translation. So you're doing cognitive services, real-time translation as you're communicating from source language to destination
That's right.
language on both
That's
ends.
right. That's right.
Um, one of the things we joked about prior to this having this podcast was, what if you were in negotiating process, say for negotiating a loan or negotiating a contract, and you were using real-time cognitive services for sentiment analysis, so you could see where basically how is this trending, is it looking good, is it going
Right.
bad, are they
Right.
how are they responding to
Right.
it. So um, Yeah, no, I think there's some really fun stuff there, and I think it's going to open up really the portal of communications. I think as people start to identify different use cases, different capabilities that we don't necessarily offer native
Well,
today in products like Teams or Skype.
communication services as a service. That's really awesome.
Absolutely,
Cool,
it really is
cool,
cool.
cool, cool.
Yeah,
Awesome.
absolutely.
All right, great. So if you are looking at that kind of stuff, go to Azure Communication Services website. You can take a look at that, and I think it's in. Is it in preview right now, Rick?
It is in
All
preview.
right, there you go.
Correct. Yep. Yep. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, we always love to talk security on Azure Flash News.
Yes, we do. I think that I personally feel like Azure's got one of the most comprehensive, if not the most comprehensive, set of security controls and attestations and compliance, as well as visibility, et cetera, into the platform itself. But extending that out across, you know, other clouds on premises. To me, it's just that we are kind of the standard.
Yeah, it's great. And so we wanted to kind of do a little bit of an update, maybe a little bit of announcing, but we wanted to bring some of the stuff that kind of maybe gets spread out a little bit, bring it back into one place. And we've done that here
Yep.
by talking a little bit about just some security innovations that have been kind of recently had on Azure. Some of these I only came across just the other day, so I know this is not all super old. Like for instance, new branding
No.
around Azure Defender. So you haven't heard of Azure Defender? Azure
Yep.
Defender is kind of all of the advanced threat protection for Azure, and we've given
Yep.
it a name. So, in other words, if you know what we're talking about when we say Azure Threat Protection for SQL or Azure Threat Protection for Cosmos or for Azure websites, that's all kind of called Azure Defender now.
Yep. Absolutely. In addition to that, though, so a while back, I don't know if folks remember on the podcast, but we did buy a company, CyberX, and we are now really starting to integrate that as a first class citizen on
Mm-hmm.
the platform.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll see some new capabilities. We've got CyberX integration with Azure Defender, so you can complement Azure Defender capabilities specifically with CyberX interaction and incorporation into the workflow, the security workflow. There's some new behavior and threat intelligence within Azure Sentinel, right? So when you're threat hunting, there's new analytics and patterns that you can be looking for. There's some other really cool things. So managed hardware security module for Azure Key Vault. So this one is really cool, right? We're actually extending the HSM capability that we had talked about kind of before the show started, and we're giving the opportunity now to extend a traditional software-based key vault, right, with managed HSM, so hardware security modules,
Yeah,
right?
that's right.
And that's in preview. And but the cool thing about it is it has this same API as Key
Yeah.
Vault. So you can use hardware, you can use software based, but you don't have to rewrite anything. Basically, the API is the same. You effectively change where you're pointing, and off you
Yeah,
go, which is really kind of
and it
stuff.
gives you that single tenant hardware security model. So this is not a
Yep,
some of the Azure Key Vault in its entry level form, if you will, is not
it's
it's not a,
shared.
yeah, it's shared, and it's not a hardware
Yep,
based
correct.
HSM, or
Yep,
it's not an HSM because it's not hardware based.
right.
But this
Exactly.
gives you FIPS 140-2 level 3 because
Level
it's yeah,
three. Wow.
so not level 2, level 3. I mean, these things are
Level
that's
three.
right. And so this gives you really the some of the highest levels of security that you need around key management.
Yep, yep. So, and there's a few other things that we do talk about in this particular announcement, specifically around customer lockbox. So there's additional service support for customer lockbox. It's also so this is in preview in the Azure Gov Cloud as well, right? So we're really kind of expanding our footprint across the different clouds too, right? So as you may or may not have heard, we did announce a specific call it a niche cloud, right, for healthcare
Mm-hmm.
at Ignite, and this is giving so you're seeing these capabilities permeate these other. So you've got the public cloud, you've got Gov Cloud, then you've got the niche clouds like healthcare, and I suspect, don't quote me on this, but I suspect you're going to see other cloud
Mm-hmm.
types or cloud targeting different industries as well.
Yeah.
So I think you'll eventually see FinServ, financial services industry. Yeah, right now we just announced healthcare. You'll probably see maybe manufacturing specifically. Who knows? But I suspect the trend will
Yeah,
continue.
that's right. Um, yeah, and I just wanted to kind of highlight we've been continuing to write um, an Azure security benchmark, which really
Hmm.
gives you sort of definitely do now type suggestions for
Please,
security on Azure. Yes. Um,
if it makes a suggestion, please follow it.
yeah, and you know we're announcing Azure Security Benchmark V2, which includes some additional controls into the
Yep.
CIS control framework, in addition to the CIS control framework. So we've already been kind of working with the Center for Internet Security to develop the Azure benchmark, Azure Security Benchmark. But now with V2, we're adding more NIST SP 800-53 controls. So anyway, these are a great baseline, um,
Oh,
prescriptive,
totally.
prescriptive security suggestions for you to go do and do now.
Yep, absolutely. So this is part of the enterprise, so we've got the cloud adoption framework. We've got well-architected reviews for our foundational frameworks for application design. We've got all these different capabilities, but at the end of the day, security should be really kind of interwoven into everything, right? That's like what we used to say DevOps. Now we're more likely to say
Yeah.
DevSecOps because security should be part of that top tier
Yeah,
conversation.
and you can see here that we have Azure Security Benchmark V2. It talks about
Yep,
network security and identity, privileged access, data protection. So there's a whole lot here that you
good
really should go
stuff.
and check out when you get a chance. So,
Yep, absolutely. Definitely,
all
definitely.
right. All right. Let's see here. Well, you know, Satya's been saying, our CEO, Satya Nadella, if you don't know who that is,
Oh, it's Satya. You know him on a first name basis.
me and Satya, we hang.
I love
You know,
it.
he's been saying for a long time, he's been saying intelligent cloud, intelligent edge. He's been really
Right.
emphasizing that there's a cloud, but then the other
Absolutely.
side of the cloud is the edge, IoT edge, York, a little bit of compute, just the right amount of compute close to where the workload is. Like maybe if you want to do
Yep.
video analytics of people walking in a store, you might not be able to stream that
Yep.
all the way to the cloud. You have to do it on the edge.
And to that point, I think a great example of what I saw was a demonstration of showing social distancing. So it would be real hard, potentially to send that data up, send it
Mm-hmm.
back, and identify, I'll say, unfortunately, violators in real time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you think about frame after frame after frame, and you're seeing them. Unfortunately, what will happen is it'll be way too far after the fact to do anything effective.
Yeah.
Whereas if you can bring it down to the edge, now you can do object detection. Ignite had a great example. I definitely recommend going and looking these things up, where they were showing specifically people who were real time. They were measuring the distance between folks that were standing in a checkout line.
Yeah. Interesting.
So there's some really interesting use cases, but again, that's not necessarily something that you're going to send to your all the way up to the cloud, do the analytic frame, boom, object detection, distance detection, send it all the way back down, only to have that data completely outdated because you've got 3 frames that have been created since
Yeah.
then.
So we kind of go through a little bit here. There's actually kind of a few dimensions to this sort of multi-edge that we're talking multi-edge and hybrid. And one of those, of course, is Azure Arc. If people don't know what
Yep.
Azure Arc is, Azure Arc is bringing here. I'll scroll this down so people can see the graphic here. Is bringing Azure services to any infrastructure. In other words, if you want to run Azure SQL Database in AWS, you can actually do that.
You can absolutely
And
do.
you can manage it from Azure, but run it on a different compute if you want. Another one is what about modernizing your data center with Azure Stack, which is basically
Yeah.
kind of like software and hardware bundled up, and you run it in Azure, you run it in your data center, and it's managed from Azure. It just looks like another region. And then the
Hmm.
other one is kind of that IoT edge, Azure IoT edge or SQL on the edge, those kinds of things.
Yep. Cognitive services.
Cognitive
Yep.
services.
Anything that really requires super, 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 super low
Yeah,
latency.
because if you're going to evaluate the AI model as you were talking about for social distancing, you really need to
Hmm.
be able to do that on the edge.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the one thing that I thought was cool that you had basically said it's like having another region.
Yeah.
So, but that's specifically to the customer. So, for example, if you're running Azure Stack on premises, for example, that's going to look like effectively another region, but only for you,
Yes,
right? That's
absolutely.
that's the
Private,
beauty of it
completely
is,
private.
yeah, exactly. So it's private, but you're not writing an application twice, one to run, optimized and cloud native in Azure, and then one to run, I'll say, for lack of a better way to put it, not cloud optimized and suboptimal on
Yeah.
premises, right? This gives you the ability to take that same code base, run it here, run it there, run it everywhere, right? Or in
That's
AWS.
right.
That's one of the use cases you brought up as well. So, so Azure Arc effectively is the control plane, and then these services and these capabilities, whether it's cognitive services or storage capabilities or I'm sorry, data. I'm sorry, I meant to say data. It's really about bringing that capability where it's needed,
Yeah.
right? So if it can stay in Azure, awesome. If you got to bring it all the way down, awesome. If you got to bring it to another cloud provider, awesome. We can support all those
That's
models.
right. That's right. So just remember that in Azure, we want to meet you where you are, whether that's
Yep.
in the Azure data centers or in another cloud data center or in your data center. We have all kinds of solutions to help you do that. And to, like if you want to run AKS, Azure Kubernetes Service, in your data center, you can do that through Azure
Yep.
Stack. So we can help you make it really easy to run a more homogeneous environment across both your data center and ours. I had somebody, I didn't say anything, but I had somebody say on the phone the other day, they were like, well, infrastructure as a service is just VMs. We do that already. And what I wanted to say is, do you deploy your virtual machines with ARM templates at the moment? I don't think so.
No.
So do you have infrastructure as code that you can deploy in an
No.
automated pipeline? I don't think so. But
Are you doing anything software defined splat?
you're right.
No.
No, not so much. Not so much. I'm not saying it's not an awesome data center that you're not doing really cool stuff, but it's quite different than the cloud. Um,
Exactly.
but today, with Azure Stack and with Azure Arc, you can start to bring those capabilities into those other environments.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
Oh,
And as one of my good friends likes to say, I hate to break the news to you, but nope.
I hate to break the news. Nope. All right.
Exactly.
Okay, so this one is pretty crazy. This next announcement's pretty
Yeah.
crazy, right?
It really
Um,
is. So, and there's some speculation, right? You and I were speculating before this podcast that really the genesis of this, right? So I have no proof, I have no evidence. This is purely speculation on my part, but I have a sneaking suspicion that given the fact that we recently were awarded and it was challenged
confirmed.
and upheld the JEDI contract, right, with the US government, I think you're going to see a lot of innovation on the Azure platform that gets surfaced because of
Yeah,
that.
right.
And this is one of those
Yeah,
examples.
there's a huge investment from. It's actually even DoD for that matter. It's not just Azure.
Yeah,
It's not just the
right.
government. It's actually the DoD. When a customer puts down that kind of money and says, "Hey, I want you to build these things as well," then we
Build it.
say, "Yes, absorb, absorb."
You too can have these capabilities for $10
That's right.
billion.
So one of the things we announced
So
today,
having said
having
that,
said that, the one of the things we
yep,
announced today or yesterday or the day before, whatever it was, is Azure Orbital process satellite
yes,
data at cloud scale. So this is a connectivity announcement between
yep,
Azure Orbital at the downlink and the orbiting satellites. So in other words, if you want to launch a satellite and process your own satellite imagery, you can use Azure Orbital to communicate with those satellites.
yep, absolutely. It's interesting too because they talk about non-geostationary orbits, low Earth orbits, medium Earth orbits, all these different like this is out of this world. But boom. No, it's just
Nice, Rick. You
it's
got it.
really cool, right? I mean, obviously, so if you're talking about geostationary orbits, right, you're talking about non-geostationary orbits, right? So that means they're really not fixed to a specific point. You've got geosynchronous orbits, which are basically elliptical paths that the satellites travel in order to maintain, well, in order so that in effective, so they don't basically come crashing down the Earth, right? You
Yeah.
got to slingshot them, pass a little bit, and come back, and
Yeah.
so there's some really interesting things that go with this, right? But when talking about that, so part of the global communications capabilities within in-flight connectivity or IFC, right? So you've got a bunch of different types of communication scenarios. So you've got maritime, you've got connected crews we talk about, these mobility and video broadcasting. These are all examples of communication scenarios addressed by the space
Right.
industry because they're dealing with all these locations that are really hard to get to otherwise,
Yeah. I
right?
mean, it's just
Um,
yeah, it's a brand new way to think about pulling communications across the satellite together using Azure as the backbone.
Yep, yep. So in theory, it wouldn't be someday you can imagine you're in a flight, but you need connectivity, right? That's coming from a satellite, and it's potentially being transmitted down into one of the Azure regions, and that has the orbital ground station, and or it could be customer dedicated specifically, depending on what area you're in.
There you go.
I won't mention any governments, but So the other cool thing too is if you take this capability, but then you couple it with, say, for example, cognitive
Yeah.
services, right? So I like this example where they show the flow of information. They show it coming from the satellite to the ground station, but you can see the raw imagery and what it looks like. But after you've processed that raw imagery, after you've taken a couple passes over it, you've done some normalization, you've done some object warping, you've done some different image. What's the
I don't know,
term? Image enhancement.
enhancement, refinement,
Yeah.
analytics, who knows?
Yeah. Now you've got a great snapshot of something that may or may not have been clear before. Maybe it was there was ground cover, there was cloud cover, there was some signal distortion because of interference. Who knows what the issue was, but taking cognitive services, you could take that imagery and actually enhance it and process it to where it's
Yeah. Well, you
optimized.
and I both worked with a customer that does some stuff
Yep,
kind of like this, and
absolutely.
they process orbital information, pictures, to help
Yep.
understand what's going on in the farms all over the world. And so,
Mhm.
they were just taking the information that from the satellite provider, but in this case, anybody who lofts a satellite can now use this as their ground communication. Like they don't
Exactly.
need to set it up anymore. They don't need to buy one from somewhere else. They can get it from Azure as a service. So
Yep, exactly. And that to me is the really cool part. Then basically then you're directly interconnecting to the global network of our or with our partners, I should say, ground station
and
networks for
your
easy targeted
and your
locations.
VNet.
And your VNet, yeah.
I mean, like this brings this stuff right to something we know and love. So like think about a satellite commuting to a virtual network, a VM in a
Yeah,
virtual network. So like this makes
absolutely.
it a part of, you're not just a satellite going to some sort of far flung communication system. This is part of an existing cloud infrastructure offering. So it's like it brings your satellites to the cloud. So
Well, and think about, in a, let's say in a crisis, right?
mm-hmm.
I've got traditional communication syncs are out, maybe for whatever reason. They're saturated or they've been destroyed. Now I've got to flip the switch and now go to SAT, right? So I'm doing SATCOM and I may be broadcasting over whatever it is, X band, S band, UHF, whatever it is, right? But I still need these communications to keep flowing. So let's say I'm doing, I still need this. I've got a control center and I'm running Teams or I'm running something. Maybe it's a roll your own solution using Azure Communication Services. I can now use this path to get the data up to the satellite and then back down through these ground stations and then processing it just like you would in Azure, the old
Yeah,
way,
right.
right? So all you're doing is changing the path to get to the data
Yeah.
center,
Yeah.
basically, or to the
That's
region.
right. That's right. It's cool, cool, cool. It's in preview
Yeah,
today. I think that's actually means private preview. So you'll have to
yeah.
ask to get involved, which makes a lot of sense if you think about this technology. We can't just,
Cuts.
yeah, you'll probably always have to get permission to try this out. Um, some sort of pre-approval because we can't just have people clogging up these transmitters and this ground to space communication path. But if you are in that business and you want to try it out, give us a call and we'll see if we can get you into the program.
Right? We know a guy or a
Or
gal.
gal. Yes,
Yeah,
we know somebody and they are very smart. Okay.
that's right.
Hey, dude,
So
we made a promise.
this
Can you
one,
remember the promise?
yes, we
Yeah,
did. We
it
absolutely
was
made a
like
promise.
what was it? Carbon. Oh, here it is. Oh, it even says the first sentence.
Carbon negative,
Carbon negative by
not
2030.
carbon neutral, not carbon neutral, carbon
In other words, we're
negative.
going to take more carbon out of the air than we put into it.
Exactly. So, and that's by 2030. So TikTok goes the clock, right? We got 10 years to make this
Which
happen.
isn't long. That's not long. That's not
No,
long.
that's what I'm saying,
So our first
right?
step, not first step, a brand new step that we're announcing is a new region, US West 3,
Yeah.
West US 3,
Yep.
except that this region is going to be carbon negative.
Carbon negative.
Negative.
It'll be in Arizona.
Yep, that's right.
Um, well, and the other part of that, so if we stop for just a second, there's a commitment to use 100% renewable energy in all of our data centers and facilities by 2025. That's 5 years from now.
And that's not just when you turn on the lights in building 35. We're talking about Azure
Data centers,
data centers.
facilities, everything.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
So, so we've made this awesome announcement. You said US West 3,
It's
correct?
called
West US
West
3.
US 3, and it's going to be in Arizona.
Yep.
And, I mean, like, this is what it's going to look like. Lots and lots of solar panels. It turns out there's a lot of sun in Arizona.
Sun.
Lots of sun
Yeah,
in
imagine
Arizona.
that,
It's very
right?
warm, very sunny. So that makes a lot of sense. Of
Yeah.
course, what that will mean is, well, I don't know. The sun doesn't shine at night, right? But servers need to run at night. So we'll need to
Yes, they do.
figure out a way to store all that energy to run overnight. But we are committed to running
Absolutely.
Azure Dynamics, all of that stuff off of renewable and carbon negative infrastructure systems.
Absolutely. So this is really cool, and it's kind of a whole hum announcement when we start talking about new regions, right? Because when we're at 60 plus regions, and so every time we announce them now, it's just kind of like, oh well, I just got another region.
Oh,
Between
yawning.
Project Natick and this one, these are kind of exciting, right? This is, we're talking about sustainable, we're talking about carbon negative, renewable solar energy, water replenishment. There's a whole bunch of, I mean, when you think about what we're doing to coordinate these efforts to make this happen, this is not a small feat. And then again, you use the water one, the underwater Project Natick solutions, and clearly you can see we're driving towards, right? We've got a destination, and we're not just talking the talk here, right? We are driving towards those
Yeah, and
outcomes.
I just briefly, we're just going to diverge for just 1 second on the Project Natick.
Yeah,
uh,
yeah,
they said that the Project Natick failure rate was way lower than our regular data centers because there's no people in
yep.
them messing them up because they're 200 feet underwater. They were
Yep.
like,
And not like we have a ton of people in our regular data
no,
centers either. I mean, it is literally just in time, least privilege access. So
absolutely.
you don't just generally see people walking around in between and the shipping containers or the servers or
No,
depending on what generation it is, you just don't see
there
that.
kind of isn't any place to go. If you've seen these things, there's not really. You can like
Right.
sort of like, shimmy through them like this. There's not much room in them. But like when it's underwater
No,
and just completely away from people, it turns out that it was even better. Anyway, okay, enough about that. I just thought that was funny.
exactly.
But
No, it really is
just
cool.
this one's going to have availability zones as you might expect, and so
Yep.
just be aware. We're continuing to invest in new regions, but in a responsible way. So because I know there's a lot of worry sometimes about all this compute power that that the cloud and data centers are putting out there, but we are committed to making sure that that is not a tax on carbon because
Yep.
upon the carbon load in the atmosphere. Because folks, we only have 6 or 8 or 10 years until we kind of push past some irreversible milestones. So we've got to take care of this, and we've got to take care of it soon. We got to get started now. So this is a great
And
step.
this is how we
That's
do
right.
it.
This is how we do it.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, and then this is like an announcement of announcements.
Yeah, this I love when they do this because it really distills, I'll say the highlights, if you will, right? So as most of you know, we just recently wrapped up the Microsoft Ignite conference, which was September 22nd through the
Mm-hmm.
24th. Of course, this year was virtual, right? Given the interesting times we
That's
live
right.
in, but we always produce this book of news. So this book of news, and I highly recommend if you didn't get a chance to attend Ignite or catch the highlights, these are those
That's
highlights.
right.
This is exactly where you want to go to see what big new announcements and what crazy things have been announced at Ignite
That's
this year.
right. And so I'm going to collapse this down so that it kind of looks like.
Yeah,
So this is what it'll look like when you get there. And you can see here, here's all the Azure AI announcements. And then here's some Azure data announcements, data center announcements. Anyway, on and on and on and on and on. And then,
data center
and
announcements.
yeah, that's right. We just talked about one. This isn't just for
Yeah,
Azure, of course. We have business apps,
right.
M365, Microsoft 365, some security stuff.
Oh, there's that whole O365 thing. I think that's a
Yeah.
fad.
And then, of course, Windows. It's funny, Windows has been relegated to the bottom.
Yep.
But all of the stuff in here, it's available. And actually, Rick, I was just thinking, if somebody finds something in here that they want us to talk about on the show, send us a tweet.
Yes.
Send us
Absolutely.
a
Tweet
tweet.
us, and we would be more than happy to include it into our
That's
podcast.
right. We would be happy to cover that. Just let us know. But anyway, this is kind of an announcement of announcements. And you'll
Yep.
notice here, if we go to Data Center, here's Azure Orbital. We talked about this earlier. If I just click on that, it kind of
Yep.
scrolls me down in the book of news. And it talks about here Azure Orbital is a new managed service, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, that way you can find everything that was announced at Ignite. That's
Ignite.
right. Okay.
Absolutely. Awesome.
That was a good one. We packed a lot in.
Yeah, we
It's
did.
been half an hour. We've exhausted. My voice is tired. I just can't do it anymore. We're going to have to get off the
Oh, we're
air.
getting old. Yeah, we're
Yeah,
getting
I
old.
know. Okay. So, hey, Rick, if people want to catch you
Yeah.
after the show, where can they catch you?
You're welcome to reach me at rick, WEY, @Microsoft.com. Or, of course, you can always reach us on our Twitter handle at Azure Flash News. We're always monitoring and always looking for feedback or answering
That's right.
questions. Uh, How about
Yeah,
you?
you can catch me on Twitter at mgarner or mgarner@microsoft.com. Either one is just fine with me. Don't mind. Just shoot us a communique. Um,
A communique. Oh, fancy.
feel free to reach out anytime. We're happy to help. So, um, I guess that's it for this week. I hope everybody
It
will tune
is.
in next week. We're kind of getting into a rhythm of Friday afternoons at 1:30, something
Yep.
like that. So
Yep.
we'll try to keep that up for everybody. And we look forward to seeing everybody next week, Rick. Have a good weekend.
Always look forward to everybody tuning in or tuning on, and getting up to speed with you. So absolutely look forward to chatting with you. Same time, same place, or roughly same time. Until then, please, please, please keep your fingers on your sanitized keyboard and your head in the clouds.
That's right, guys. Thank you very much. Have a very good day.
Have a great day.